Hey guys, in a recent upload revisiting my first amp, it was a Marshall 8080, you would have seen that I actually hooked up EQ into the effects loop. And I was just playing around with, it's just a Boss EQ7 pedal, and I was just playing around with the EQ, particularly the top end through the Marshall, to see if I could just sort of tame that barking top end that the G12T has, the speaker from the Marshall 8080. But the actual plan was not to use the EQ, the Boss EQ pedal, but to also demo the rock bottom, the DBE rock bottom, which is a new effect, new circuit that we've come up with. But I had an issue with it, so it didn't work out so well. So I'm just going to do a separate video on the rock bottom now, just go over a few things with it and show you what it actually sounds like. So before I do that, two things. The first one is what was actually wrong with it. It was a bit of a strange problem actually. I had tested it, I rocked it before I boxed it, and after I boxed it I tested it and it worked perfectly fine as well. But then when I went to use it to do the Marshall 8080 EQ portion of that video, it just stopped working. It had a dead output, no hum, no buzz, nothing on the output. So it was a bit odd, and the problem turned out to be quite odd too. And this is the first one for me. I'd actually missed soldering a solder pad onto the IC, one of the ICs, and I think it could have been the power, maybe the V plus, like pin 8 or pin 1 or whichever one it is. I missed that, which would explain why there was nothing coming out on the output. So it was a simple fix. I just saw the pad wasn't soldered and went, there's the problem. That's the reason why it was working, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And the second thing I want to mention too is there doesn't seem to be too many EQ, do-it-yourself EQ pedals out there. I think a lot of people are scared off by a lot of EQ pedals having sliders, but as you can see, you don't need sliders. You can still build a pretty comprehensive do-it-yourself EQ pedal by just using potentiometers. Because obviously the problem with sliders is to actually cut that slot out, and if you look closely, that slot actually isn't square. It does actually have a round top and bottom, so I'm assuming it's some sort of CNC drill that starts a hole and then just moves up and then comes out. A bit like a router, I suppose, a wood router, same sort of thing. But either way, as far as a DIY solution, this sort of setup is going to turn a lot of people off, because it's just too difficult to try and drill out something that doesn't look totally botched. And then of course you've got to find the are they called potentiometers, resistance sliders as well. So it's just too hard. This is a much simpler solution. And whenever we approach one of these projects, we're often asking ourselves, what can set this aside? What can set this apart from a commercial product? I mean, you can go and buy an EQ for 50 bucks. You know, I think I had a quick look when we were working on this one to see what's the competition, and you know, you can sort of ask yourself, well, I can just go and buy one. I don't see the fun in that, personally, being a DIY sort of person, but you can do it. You can just go and buy one. So how can we set this apart from the commercial alternatives? This is the build doc, and I'm going to show you where I'm going with this. The answer that we came up with to make this pedal, the do-it-yourself alternative, set apart from other commercial options out there, is to make the EQ bands customizable. So that means on the bill of materials, you've just got a standard sort of setup, but you don't have to keep those. You don't have to keep the frequencies. As you can see, we've got, you might be able to see, 16.5 hertz, 125 hertz, 500 hertz, 1000 hertz, and 4000 hertz. You don't need to keep those 5 bands. You can actually change them to whatever you actually want to, whatever frequencies you want to focus on. And we've got some sort of preset values here as well. So if you want to, me and Eric have come up with these. So you've got EQ, as you can see, he says here, EQ section for bass and down tuned guitars, and then you've got EQ section for standard tuned guitars, EQ section for Mesa style, so that's the frequencies that you often see. I think this is the 5-band Mark V EQ. Instead of guessing, of course, I could just turn the camera around and check my Mark V 25 watt, and you'll see that that is actually what the frequency bands that the Mark V use. But of course, we can go one step further and actually have a list of all the frequencies and all the values that you'll need to get those frequencies as well. And that's what we've covered quite a range of frequencies in this list. And just while we're in the build doc too, Eric's gone into an in-depth circuit analysis as well of the effect that you can read through if you want to have a bit more of an understanding of what's actually going on a technical level. And in that actual circuit analysis too, he explains to you how you can use the calculation to come up with your own frequencies. You don't even have to use the ones that we've used. We've just put that list there for people that don't really want to go into that much detail, but do want to customize their own EQ to how the way that they like it. So I hope that gives you guys some power over how you want your EQ to be set up, as opposed to just buying one off the shelf and being stuck with the frequencies that the manufacturer has given to you. So I'll just quickly go over the aesthetics and then we'll have a look at the sound demo. So just in case anyone's wondering what I've done to get this particular look for my pedal. So that big silver thing is actually a piece of aluminium foil which I crushed, and then I flattened out again so it had that sort of funny effect, which doesn't look too bad, but it does actually kind of look a bit like a piece of aluminium foil that's been crushed up and then flattened. It didn't have quite the spectacular effect I was hoping for, but it doesn't look too bad. I use thermal labels actually for this. I've got a thermal label printer which I use to put stickers on the front of pedal parts that people order, and I use that for this, but that was not such a good idea because it reacted with the epoxy and the actual print just disappeared. So I had to draw over the top of it. So that writing is actually drawn onto the epoxy, so that will actually scratch off over time. I just wanted to put something on there so I could see what was going on. And I suppose, I mean, they almost look like dynamo labels. I could probably just put dynamo labels over the top of those anyway. And another little detail from the front, also that LED is one of those extruded LEDs. I have a video specifically addressing how that's done as well. Depending on what order I upload these videos, I'm not sure if that one's out yet or not, but if it's not out yet, you'll see it soon. So yeah, it's an extruded LED and it doesn't actually stick through, so you can smash your foot on the front of that pedal as hard as you want and it won't pop out the other side. That's the point of the extruded LEDs. And so just briefly on the inside too, it does fit in a 1590B. Eric actually designed it to go in a 125B, and if you're a novice, maybe you should just stick with a 125B just so you've got a bit of extra real estate. It wasn't meant to go in a 1590B, but when I was looking at the PCB, I like a challenge, and I said to Eric, I reckon that can go in a 1590B, and I got it in there. It wasn't actually that hard to get in there either. You can see there's still a good 3 millimeters on the side there. Look at that. You could park a car in there with the doors open. Maybe not that much space, but there is some space there. It's not super tight. I've had worse layouts that are just like like 1 mil of space on, and those can be pretty tricky. But this has got a fair bit of space. At least for someone that's got a bit of experience. Like I said, if you haven't got much experience, then just do a 125B. And that's pretty much it. It's all the same stuff. The mini mono jacks on my store I use all the time. That's pretty much all I use these days. And the build was simple. If I hadn't had that silly problem with the IC leg not being soldered down, it would have been a very straightforward build. And even fixing that problem wasn't that hard either. Like I said, I spotted it, resoldered it, bang, fixed. So I think we should go on to what this actually sounds like. So just on the front there, just note that pot is actually volume, and then you've got the 5 frequencies. I'll put it through the Marshall first. Let's have a listen to it through that first, and then I'll whack it through the 1590B. Mesa Boogie as well and turn off the Mesa Boogie 5-band EQ and use this one instead, just to have a listen to it, just for fun. Why not? Let's give it a shot. So sorry, that demonstration may have been a little bit muddled, but the idea is, well, what I've always done is try and get the amp to sound the best that it can, which is quite a challenge with this particular amp, but you try and get it to sound as best as you can, and then you use the EQ. Then I use the EQ to make smaller adjustments from there, because with this amp it's got 3 bands, so it's not too bad. Some other amps only have 2 bands. So you're quite limited to your tone shaping ability. If you have another EQ that you can put into the effects loop, you have all those extra bands that you can play around with, and you can fine tune it from there. It's fine tuning really. And some equipment you just have problems with. They just have way too much treble or way too much bass, and you want to cut that back as well. And you can do that with an EQ. This EQ is additive and subtractive, so you can cut as well as add. So let's have a look at the Mesa Boogie Mark V now. So in case you don't know the Mesa Boogie very well, the Mark V, you can turn that the 5-band EQ off. So with the switches, you can actually turn the EQ on and off. You can see that's EQ on, that's off, and that's foot switch selectable. So there's a foot switch that you can plug into this thing, and then you can turn it on and off on the fly if you're playing live or whatever. So we'll hear it with the EQ on and then off, obviously, and just hear what it sounds like compared to the rock bottom. So just a few closing comments. I went through the extremes on each knob. I'm sorry if I hurt your ears. I just wanted to show you how much boost you can get out of each of the knobs. I'm not sure if that demonstration showed you very well or not, but yeah, that they are the extremes. Never sounds very good when you do that, but yeah, I just wanted to show you what the extremes of each of the frequencies can do. So the other thing too was the EQ on the Mark V. That's my favorite setting at the moment. It changes obviously over time, but at the moment that's where I've set it. Sounds awfully scooped compared to this, and I actually preferred it initially, but after I started to play with this, I sort of thought it actually sounds a bit more open, which is actually more, gives it more of a rocky sound edge and less of a metally edge, and I don't mind each of those options, but yeah, it was just different. I didn't actually like both of. I actually liked both of them. The way that the way that I ended up EQing this, I actually liked as well. So finally, one other thing I was thinking of as well. If you have one of those Joyo Mark V rip-offs, it doesn't come with the EQ, so you could actually build one of these with a Mark V EQ and get something hopefully in the ballpark of what a Mark V would sound like with that with the EQ in there, because it is an essential part of the Mark V. I know Joyo's doing it to save money on production costs, but I think you really need that EQ in there. It just makes the amp so much more versatile. So you could build one like that and put those frequencies in, and hopefully you'd get something in the ballpark. Like I said, the frequencies I'm adjusting on this are not the same as the Mark V. Like I said, I went with the default bill of material, but if you're doing it to have a Mesa EQ, then you can just follow the frequencies that like we've listed in the build doc. And if you don't have one, definitely get one. They're an essential utility pedal that you should have in your gear. So thanks for watching the video, guys. I appreciate it. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot. Obviously, if you want to build the EQ pedal by a PCB, that also helps me out a lot. And yeah, stay tuned for more, and I'll see you in the next video. See you guys.